The air inside the upscale bistro felt like it dropped nearly 18 degrees the moment Veronica Hale's voice rang across our table. "Oh, my Lena comes from a single-parent household," she said loudly, fake concern dripping from every word. "How admirable that you've managed to achieve anything at all." My grip tightened around the stem of my glass as Ethan Cross's mother continued. Her lips curved in a practiced smile while her eyes stayed icy. "Growing up without a father must have been incredibly difficult. Honestly, dating someone with a background like yours would be quite inconvenient for Ethan." I glanced toward Ethan, my blind date, and the supposed successor of Aurelius Trust Bank. He sat back comfortably beside his mother, nodding along with a smug expression, clearly enjoying every second. The soft chatter of the restaurant faded as they discussed my upbringing openly, as if I weren't sitting right there, as if my mother wasn't seated calmly beside me. Her posture was straight, her face unreadable, years of restraint holding her steady. How arrogant of ordinary people to think they could ever marry into a family like ours. Ethan's father, Gregory Cross, muttered without even lowering his voice, "And even if you did try," Veronica added dismissively, waving her hand, "it wouldn't hurt much. It'd only be your money anyway. Low-class people with low origins." That was when it finally clicked. They hadn't invited us for dinner. They'd invited us to be humiliated. I looked directly at them and spoke evenly. "So you're saying we should withdraw our funds from your bank, correct? Please go ahead." Their lips curled into satisfied smiles, eyes filled with pure contempt. That was the moment I decided people who judged others by their origins deserved to experience the same treatment. I smiled. "My name is Lena Parker. I'm 31 years old, and I work as a senior brand strategist. This is the story of how I stripped an elite family of everything they believed, made them untouchable." I never imagined I'd be ambushed like this. The blind date with Ethan had already been uncomfortable enough. His patronizing tone when he learned I worked for a global consumer firm instead of an esteemed financial institution. His constant bragging. The way he looked at me like I was beneath him. But when he suggested our parents meet, I foolishly agreed, thinking it would be an easy, public way to put an end to things. "Maybe he's just nervous," my mother had suggested earlier. "You said he hasn't dated much. The way he talks is strange, Mom." I'd replied. "Like I don't quite measure up." "Well, his parents will be there," she said calmly. "If it feels wrong, we'll leave. I'll come with you." I apologized for dragging her into it, but she only laughed. "It's fine. Besides, I'm curious about Aurelius Trust Bank. If only we'd known what they had planned." When we arrived at the restaurant in Valemont City, our table was ready, but Ethan's family was late. Intentionally, I realized later, a subtle power play. Gregory offered no real apology, and Veronica launched straight into interrogation. "So where's your father? Is he joining us later?" I glanced at Ethan. He smirked. I'd already told him my father passed away when I was a child. They knew exactly what they were doing. My mother answered with remarkable composure. "My husband died after a long illness when Lena was very young. Today, I'm here as her parent." That was when Veronica raised her voice deliberately, ensuring nearby tables could hear. "Oh my, so she's from a single-parent family." Each remark cut deeper, not because of the cruelty, but because of how polished it felt. Like belittling those they deemed inferior was a family tradition. "I'm not really attracted to strong-minded women." Ethan cut in when I finally spoke up, as though I should be honored he'd considered me at all. That's when my mother's patience finally cracked. In all 31 years of my life, I'd rarely heard her speak so firmly. "Did you invite us here just to look down on us?" she asked. "You're enjoying mocking us for being a single-parent family, aren't you?" "Let's not exaggerate," Gregory replied, feigning offense. It's just harmless teasing. No one feels respected when they're belittled, my mother said calmly. Every comment you've made has been condescending. We won't tolerate this any longer. Ethan's family frowned. Typical of common folk, Gregory muttered again. Commoners, my mother repeated softly. Perhaps, but this has clarified things for me. They looked briefly startled, then laughed. What exactly do you think you can do? Veronica scoffed. My mother exhaled slowly. We currently hold deposits with your bank, but after tonight, we won't entrust our finances to people like you. Veronica smirked. Oh, but we don't even recognize your name. It can't be a meaningful amount, probably insignificant. Veronica brushed it off with a scoff. That's right. Even if you cause trouble by withdrawing your funds, it won't make any difference to us. People from low-status backgrounds aren't needed anyway, Gregory Cross added coldly. That was when I understood my mother's final attempt at civility had failed completely. They continued sneering, utterly unaware of whose dignity they were trampling. I exhaled quietly and asked one last time, my voice steady. So we're closing our account, correct? Go right ahead. They replied mockingly, their gazes heavy with contempt. The way they looked at us made my stomach turn. That night, I made a phone call I never thought I'd need to make again. Grandpa, it's Lena. I need your help. What happened, sweetheart? Oliver Parker's voice was alert despite the late hour. It's about Aurelius Trust Bank. There was a pause. Tell me everything. I explained it all, the blind date, the arranged family dinner, the calculated humiliation. They didn't know who you were, he said, his tone sharpening into the authoritative edge I remembered from childhood. And they made their opinion of single-parent families very clear. Another pause, longer this time. Come to my estate tomorrow morning, you and your mother. The next day, Mom and I arrived at Grandpa's home to discuss our next steps. As we sat in his study, I suddenly remembered something important. Grandpa, I recorded the entire conversation at the restaurant. I had a feeling things might turn ugly, so I started recording before we even ordered. He nodded approvingly. Very wise, that will matter. 2 weeks passed. My phone buzzed endlessly with calls from Ethan, all of which I ignored and eventually blocked. Then the call I'd been waiting for finally came. Grandpa wants us at Aurelius Trust Bank tomorrow at 9:00 a.m. I told Mom that evening. She hesitated. Are you certain about this, Lena? They chose this fight. I replied calmly. They just chose the wrong people. The following morning we arrived exactly at 9:00 a.m. As soon as I gave my name, the receptionist's expression shifted. Of course, Ms. Parker. Please follow me to the executive conference room. When we entered, Ethan's family was already there, pale, stiff, and visibly uneasy. Veronica stood up immediately and hurried over, bowing deeply. I didn't acknowledge her apology. Instead, I smiled faintly. What exactly are you apologizing for? She bit her lip, trembling, whether from anger, fear, or both. I couldn't tell. There was simply too much she should have apologized for. This situation started when I said we'd close our account. I continued. On its own, that account wasn't particularly large. I paused, letting the silence stretch, but Grandpa Oliver's accounts are another matter. At that moment, the door opened. Oliver Parker walked in. At 78, his presence alone commanded instant silence. The room seemed to shrink around him. He had managed my late father's inheritance through the bank for years, along with maintaining substantial personal accounts of his own. If all of those funds were withdrawn together, the total would amount to roughly $7 million. Gregory's face drained of color. I didn't realize Lena was related to the former CEO. That's no excuse, I said sharply. Even if you hadn't known, your prejudice was entirely your own. So if we had been relatives, you would have treated us differently, my mother asked quietly. Don't speak to my father like that, Ethan snapped. This is your fault for not telling us your grandfather used to run the bank. I had no obligation to disclose personal family matters to a stranger, I replied coolly, especially one who chose to mock us first. Ethan clenched his jaw, unable to respond. You insulted us knowing my mother raised me alone, I continued. When we said we'd withdraw our funds, you told us to go ahead. We simply followed your instructions. But it's just. It may be insignificant to you. My mother interrupted calmly. But have you ever considered how it feels to have your family openly insulted? Silence fell. Veronica trembled. Gregory stared at the table. Only Ethan still looked defiant. Getting all self-righteous just because someone talked about you. He muttered. Grandpa's voice cut through the room like ice. Even now, after being given time to reflect, you're still thinking only of yourselves. It's not my fault, it's hers. Watch your words. Oliver warned, if you continue, you'll make your situation far worse. Ethan fell silent, glaring at me. Then, as if cornered, he snapped, who would expect someone from a single-parent family to be related to a former CEO? You came here knowing I was next in line just to embarrass us. Enough. Oliver commanded. He turned to Gregory. I understand wanting to pass leadership to your son, but after witnessing his mindset, it's impossible for him to continue as CEO. That's absurd over something like this, Gregory protested, then fell silent under Oliver's gaze. You still don't understand, Oliver said evenly. Your attitude is the problem. I may be retired, but the board will decide your future. He paused. And remember, we recorded both the restaurant conversation and this meeting. I placed the recorder on the table and pressed play. Their own voices filled the room, dripping with contempt. How could you prepare something like that? That's unfair, Ethan shouted. It was a precaution, I replied calmly, one you forced me to take. No one argued after that. Thank you, Oliver said to us quietly. We'll handle things from here. Mom and I left the building, the weight of the past weeks finally lifting. In the end, Grandpa didn't officially move the funds. Gregory Cross was removed from his CEO position. Ethan was demoted and soon resigned on his own, unable to handle the blow to his pride. Given Grandpa Oliver's influence in the financial sector, Ethan would struggle to re-enter the industry. Gregory intended to work until retirement, but Grandpa said the stress would take its toll. As for Veronica, stripped of her status, she reportedly took up part-time work to maintain her lifestyle, though her attitude made it difficult to keep any position. I apologized to the friend who had arranged the blind date. It's not your fault, she said. You couldn't have known. I shared the truth only with her. She'd heard about Ethan through others and bore no blame. My mother once worried her circumstances had held me back. I reassured her I'm happy everything I have I earned. She smiled softly, thank you. Later, Grandpa invited us to visit again. It had been exhausting, but I was finally at peace. I'd been promoted at work through my own merit, not family influence. I wasn't interested in dating for now. I was content, and someday, I knew I'd meet someone who valued people for who they are, not where they come from.